All right. So the next assignment is the mix assignment. Now, this is when you guys are going to get to start showing off. You now understand how to use your tools. And what we want you to do is kind of show us you know how to use these tools. We're not going to grade you on this mix assignment for the mix itself. We are going to grade you for your use of the tools. If you've properly set up, let's say, time-based effects, if you've properly used EQs, you know, where it makes sense, compressors, gates, and let me see, time-based, compressors, gates, and then the other thing is we're going to explain, or I'm going to explain, panning and faders. So in other words, doing your mix, your general mixing process. Now, again, you'll be downloading a file. This file is actually the song. It's the Reggae Junkies singing a song called Stay Fly. This was recorded at Full Sail. Artist Relations gets different groups to come in, and we record them. And part of our deal is, yes, they get to keep their recordings and everything, but at the same time is we get to use them for stuff like this, where we're teaching, you know, other students about mixing and so forth. So I needed a song. I chose this one because it's nice, neutral, has different, you know, instrumentation, perfect for us to just to start. You know, it's not too difficult, not too many tracks or anything. The instructions, you'll download them. In fact, I think I'm missing them, so I'm going to go ahead and download that. All right, so it's right here. As you can see in there, once you download and open up the session, it's going to start off just like this. All your faders are down except for your output. And there's no EQs, no compressors, no panning, no nothing. It's a very, you know, it's just exactly as a mix would actually start off. You come here and nothing's happening. I can hit play. I see movement, but as you can see, all the faders are down. That's why I don't hear anything. So with a song or a mix like this, first thing you're going to do is actually start to listen to what's happening. Well, what is this song about? What instruments are there? Hopefully everything's labeled, which in this case it is. If you get a session where nothing is labeled, this is where I was explaining how important, you know, labeling stuff, the tracks. Notice all these tracks are labeled as to what instruments are on those tracks. We want to make sure, you know, when you're recording, if you're tracking any song and you're passing this on to another engineer to mix, or if you are the mix engineer, those labels are godsend, because sometimes you're just looking at audio files, you don't know what the heck is there. So labeling, very important. Now I could sit here and start showing you guys what some of these things are. So I've got all the drums here. I could select by holding down Shift and just going across and selecting all the faders that I want. Come on, there we go. And once you've selected them all, you could actually bring them all up. And why are they not all coming up? There they go. That was weird. Try that again. There we go. All right. So we've got the drums. Over here, bass. I've got some keyboards. As you can see, they were in stereo. I've got a guitar, got a rhythm style guitar. I've got a lead vocal, which you heard part of already. I've got these harmonies, which, let's see, are they playing right now? No. Let's come back over to around here. So, 2 harmonies, plus this one, which is like an ad-lib vocal.
to the Most High.
They do some call and response type things. He also, on this track, does a little bit of harmonies. So there's all your vocals, your guitar, your keys, your drums, and your drums. Now, we are going to, once you've kind of just heard everything, okay, yeah, there's just instruments all happening on all those tracks, you probably want to do something called a rough mix. Now, we're going to start mixing this thing to make it sound and give us an idea of what we need to do in this mix. You'll be listening to each sound and going, okay, well, I definitely need to EQ that kick. I need to EQ the snare. Some compression would definitely help on that kick and the snare. The overheads, well, I'll start explaining about all those things. Then after you mix, you do a rough mix on the drums, then you go to the bass, you bring in the bass, then you start bringing in the other instruments, then lastly the vocals. And you listen to the whole song, you get familiarized with the song, and decide how you're going to mix this. What style, how do you feel it should be? This is one thing you'll notice, how you could mix the same song 50 million different ways, make it sound everything from country to, you know, reggae to rock and roll to dance, just by your mixing style, using your tools, which you all have been shown how to, you know, your EQs, your compressors, all those things. You can make these things sound like in different styles. Now, some of you are probably already know what a drum kit is, but for the ones that don't, because I do get some students that, you know, have never really paid attention to what a drum kit is, I'm going to grab a picture right here. This is a basic drum kit. I've got two of them. Now, in this recording, we have actually neither one of these. This is the one that's in the recording. We have this drums. You'll notice that, you know, you could have different setups. Your drummer could have extra, you know, devices. In this recording, you can see it's got a kick. This is with a bass drum or kick. It's underneath. So the drummer sits right here. Is kick. The drum gets triggered right here from the foot. Usually you put a mic on this side. You can put it on this side as well. There's different miking techniques that you can go more in depth with the lynda.com stuff that we have for you. You'll have the toms. There you can see tom 1, tom 2, tom 3. Notice that usually we go 1, 2, 3. The lower number is the smaller toms, and as it goes, the larger number, as you can see over here, is the bigger toms. And you'll hear it in pitch. The bigger the tom, the lower the pitch. Then you have your snare, it's right here, and then your cymbals. Your cymbals and hi-hats, they all get picked up usually via two microphones called the overheads. The overhead microphones, there's one on the left and one on the right, just above the whole drum kit, just high enough where the drummer won't hit it with his drumsticks, but it'll pick up everything. It's usually used for the high-end stuff, all the cymbal work, but at the same time, all these microphones are going to get bleed, and this is where our tools come in handy. You guys remember the gates, the noise gates? So on a live kit like this, noise gates are definitely going to help you out a lot. Now, our kits could be as simple as, you know, that first one I showed you. Where is it? There it is. This one only has two toms, a snare, and some cymbals. It could be like a little jazz kit to, you know, more like this, more of a rock and roll kit, or with four toms. Or you might even get something as elaborate as a kit like this. Check this guy out. Now, how often do you see that? Not very often. But there are some drummers out there that, hey, they believe the more the better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kick drums. They're probably all tuned differently to sound different. you've got an assortment of cymbals all over. If I remember correctly, I counted like 3 snares. So he has different snares to give him different sounds. He's got an electronic drums back here. That's the Hand Sonic from Roland. He's got another trigger drum of some sort over here. The Rototoms here. So you can see he has quite a few things. That would require a lot more tracks than we have right now in this session. Don't be alarmed if this pops up. Just think of it, it's the same thing. When we mix this thing, we usually try to mix this in what we call drummer's perspective. In other words, pretend that you are the drummer sitting right here and you're playing these drums. The panning, in other words, the location of these drums, panning is done here. The location, you try to match it, more or less. The general rule is that the kick drum and the snare, even though the snare is partially over, are usually dead center, because both the kick drum and the snare are the driving force behind, you know, any drum kit. So we usually leave those 2 alone. Then the toms, I start panning them just like I see in the picture. I pan that one slightly this way, this one slightly this way, third tom a little farther. So that when he plays the toms across, you'll actually hear it in your stereo field panning across, just like if you were really playing these drums. The hi-hat, some people will do it as, you know, as drastic as like the tom, but usually I just bring in a little bit. It sounds better. And then your overheads, well, remember, that's a stereo mic system. You have 2 microphones, 1 on each side. So overhead left, let's pan that one completely to the left. Overhead right, pan that one completely to the right. Now when I hit play, I can start bringing up these levels. And here's my kick. All right. I'm going to switch these meters because now I'm mixing instead of monitoring levels. If you remember right here, pre-fader, switch it, take it off. So now they're post-fader. And I'll tell you guys that using the level right around here, -12, is a good spot for this song. And it's just so you don't start clipping on the final mix. But kicks, add some snare. Bring in some toms. Oops, I missed that last one. If you heard just that section right there, listen to the toms. You heard it go across from the left to right, just like the toms are set up. Add a little hi-hat. Maybe some more snare. Right now it's side stick that's actually on there. That's where he hits the side of the rim versus the center of the snare. And let's let that get to the snares, and then I'll bring in the overheads, and you'll see how much it'll widen this. See, we hear some stereo movement, left and right. The placement sounds like I'm sitting right there. And let's bring in these overheads. I'm going to bring them in together. Select both. Now it sounds like I'm sitting right at those drum kits. With that drum kit playing. Another thing that you can do also is if you like right now we know this was basically the setup, because I've told you, if you get a live recording of drums and you don't know what the setup was for the drummer, but you want to match it because of the placement of all these mics, remember they're all open. If you have stuff panned opposite from when it was recorded, then things start, you start messing around with the frequency response. You get comb filtering and so forth, and weird stuff happens. So as close as you could get it to the original makeup of where the mic placement is, the better. So I could just solo the overheads and listen. This helps you figure out where the position of all those sounds within the drum kit are. Like if you listen to that, I could hear the snares slightly over to one side, a little louder. And if you imagine, if the drummer's sitting right here, he's going to hear that snare a little bit louder on one side. You even it out by putting this guy in the center. So you start mixing and you're getting your position of everything. Now I've got the drums. Let's start adding some bass. That sounds good. Bring in some keys. Bring in the guitar. Alright, let me point out one thing here. Hopefully, as you're listening, you're getting these things as well. You're starting to notice them. The drums, I hear a nice stereo spread. The bass, because of the low frequency of a bass, almost always you leave it dead center. Again, it's something that you want to, the low frequency stuff, you want them centered. It spreads it out better through the speakers. The bass and the kick, if I solo those two, I'll bring up the kick a little bit. Okay, so if you heard the bass and the kick, they kind of blend. And this is a problem on a lot of mixes. Now, how do we fix that? Well, EQ. Remember, you guys have a tool that you could select volume levels at certain frequencies. This is the way I like to explain. Let me see if you guys can see me in my hands. So, if you have two sounds, and they're within the same frequency area, and they're both center, they kind of mask each other. They're, like you can't see both of my hands. But if I leave holes with the EQ, and then you can start seeing some of the other stuff happening. If I make those holes on the other one so that they literally work together, now there's separation. You can see both my hands at the same time. The fingers that represent the bass and the fingers that represent the kick drum. That gives you a separation between the two sounds just by using your EQ to where I don't have to have these two instruments fighting each other. An audience member can sit down, close their eyes, and just listen to the bass and hear every note because it's no longer blended in with the kick, and vice versa. They can hear when every kick hits versus, was it a kick there or was it a bass? I'm not sure because it hit very close frequencies and they're within the same range. So using your EQ and a little compression on both the bass and the kick, you could get enough separation where those two will never step on each other. They work together and you get that driving force behind all those songs. Although some engineers, unfortunately, they don't realize that and they just bring up the bass. They go, oh, let me EQ the bass. They EQ it one way, then they EQ the kick, and they just happen to choose all the same frequencies, and they don't think about, well, two things are going to be playing at once. They're both in the same spot and the same EQing. They're going to blend. They're not going to separate the way you want them to. So our tools are so important there. EQ and compression. I would use on both those. The other thing is, well, there's other instruments that are also fighting for that center spot. The keys and the guitar that I brought in. So why not pan them slightly? Let's see what it sounds like if I just pan it. You'll hear the difference. Oops, need to come over to the file. I've got somebody else soloed. There we go. Just a little panning. Now I read levels, but they're no longer stepping on each other. The keyboards are more to the left, and this guitar, especially there. See, just that little panning, and then imagine also some EQing. You could really get separation of all those instruments, so when the listener listens to this, they can hear every single instrument. Let's move on to the next thing. Well, we've got those, I'm not doing this as a rough mix right now, but all those instruments are done. Now I'm going to move on to the vocals.
And praises people.
Lead.
Yes, I do. Every day.
Some harmonies.
Every day.
And the ad-lib.
Yeah. Wanna thanks and praise Him.
Let's solo those.
Stay flying away. Oh yeah.
Hopefully,
Every day. Oh yeah.
here, listen.
Wanna thanks and praise Him. And I stay flying away. Oh yeah.
Especially right there, you hear where all those vocals, they just kind of step all over each other. A simple fix for this, again, is that panning. That panning can help so much. And then levels. Right now, you've seen me, I've been doing levels, just kind of blending everything to make it sound cool, like, okay, it fits, it's loud enough, it's not, drowned in the rest of the mix. So levels and panning can help you. The lead vocalist, where do we see him? He's always on front, he's in the front of the stage. He's going to be the loudest, so he's going to be the closest to you. So have him a little louder than everybody else. The background singers or the harmonies, well, those guys are usually behind somewhere, and they try to spread them out. So that way they're not competing with the lead. And you'll notice they're lower level just because they're behind. Let's pan them out. And they're lower. Now, this ad-lib guy. Well, I can have him fighting for, front spot. But let's go ahead and bring him down, okay, which I kind of already have him a little lower. And let's pan him slightly. So now he's going to be doing like call and response with the lead singer, where they won't step on each other. And let's play that section again.
Thanks and praise Him, and I stay flying away. Oh yeah.
So in that spot right there, you heard harmonies. We could hear they were filling in or doing harmony for that lead, and the ad-lib was not stepping on the lead as well. You heard all the different positions, all the different singers, and we're just doing a rough blend. You could fine-tune this even more in depth. Let's go to where I can see all the vocals right there. So,
No place I'd rather be in the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more than gold.
now they're all pretty dry. Why don't let's start adding some of those time-based effects. So I would have done this after I EQ'd each vocal and probably used compression on each vocal. Vocals are definite need of, EQing and compression. They just, practically every mix, if not all the mixes I've ever done, always EQ on vocals and compression. I want to make sure that everything is heard when the mix is done, where the vocalists can all be understood correctly. They all sound evenly throughout the song, so you could hear their vocals throughout the song. That's where the message is in the singing. EQ before compression, I see that question, and yes is the way I normally do it, but you can do it the other way around. The only order that there is a difference where you definitely have to follow the rule is compression and gating. when you do those two on the same track, you want to gate first, then compress. Otherwise, if you're compressing the signal, you're taking the dynamic range of the signal, squashing it, and now trying to run it through a gate that is using the dynamic range to open and close. You've made your job a lot harder. So first, gate it, then compress it. That's the only one that's really a rule. EQ, you could put it in after all of that, or before that, or right in between if you wanted to. I could actually compress the vocal first, then, gate the vocal first, then EQ it, then compress it. Or I could gate it first, then compress it, then EQ it. I mean, I could put it any which way you want. You could try the different ways. It'll sound slightly different each way, but the only rule is always gate before you compress. The rest is up to you. So going back to this, let's say we've EQ'd the vocal, we've removed. You guys remember how to use the EQ?
No place
I'll
I'd
solo.
rather be in the midst
Solo
of
this
His
guy.
majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more than gold.
Find a spot that I don't like.
And I let Jah take control.
I know he's a
Let
little
the
nasally
love
somewhere around there.
unfold.
Like
Let
there.
the love unfold.
I don't like that. Bring it down, to where I don't kill the vocal or anything. But remember, I with the EQing lesson, I showed you guys that it's actually better to cut than it is to boost. If I boost, there's always a chance of, you notice how it clipped there. Chance of clipping, as well as also trying to boost all the good parts. Well, there's too many good parts in that vocal. I'd go nuts. So it's better to remove the bad stuff, because then all the good stuff shines through. It actually makes it through easier. Much better to cut. There's also some other things that happen with the audio. When you boost too much, you start messing with the audio's phase. That's a little bit more in depth. So just know that it does happen. You'll learn more about it later. But it's actually better to cut. So cut, remove, or bring down in amplitude the bad stuff. The rest of the vocal will shine through, giving you a better sound. So let's say I EQ'd it, and I'm just doing this real quick. I'm going to come and grab some dynamics compressor. Let's see. I'll use the Studio VCA.
No place I'd rather be.
Set up the parameters
in the
to
midst of His
get
majesty.
some compression.
Feel the power in my soul.
Turn that off.
This power worth much
So I have
more
full
than
control.
gold. I let Jah take control. Let the love unfold. Let the love unfold. Yeah, give thanks and praises, people. Yes, I do. Every day.
That helped it. It sounds natural. So I've got, a quick compressed vocal that is EQ'd also. Imagine that's going all the way across. And now let's say I want reverb. I want these guys all to sound like they're in the same place. So if you remember how to set up a time-based effect, I have to use my sends. Go to a bus. Bus 1's not used, so let's go ahead and grab bus 1. You notice as soon as I did that, aux 1 was created. I'm going to come up here and call that reverb. Add a reverb. Let's use that chroma. Chroma reverb is real nice. Which one you use, it's up to you. If you want to try the other ones, great. Go for it. Here, I don't need to be that big. Let's shrink me down now. Alright, so got it set up, at least for this vocal. Well, I'm going to want that same reverb because I want everybody to be singing in the same spot. So let's turn on all theirs. I'm routing everything currently to bus 1. That's all 4 vocal tracks to the same reverb. So now they all have reverb. I don't have them turned up. So let's do a blend. Let's start mixing. Now, remember the positions of the singers, left and right. You know, this one's just partially over, and this guy's dead center because he's the lead. Also think of location. Is it going to be closer to you, farther to you? This is what makes you decide how you're going to mix these guys. Because I've got to send over to this reverb some signal from each one, but I want it to be in a way that certain ones have more reverb than others. So the lead vocalist, well, I want him closer. So I'm not going to give him as much reverb. Let's hit play and let's see what we hear.
No place I'd rather be in the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more.
Now, when you solo those tracks, the reverb still shows up because Logic is smart enough to know that, hey, you're sending some signal over there, so I'm sure since he's soloing this channel strip, he wants to hear the reverb. You'd have to come here and mute the reverb if you didn't want to hear it. Well, let's hear that.
No place I'd rather be than in the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more than gold. I let ya take control. Let the love unfold.
Okay, I like that.
Let the love.
Now, let's think. The background singers, well, they're in the back, right? So they need to be a little farther. At that point, I would say, well, then let's send more level. So more than this guy.
No place I'd rather be than in the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more than gold. I let ya take control. Let the love unfold. Let the love unfold.
Now let's add this last one. Well, he's not going to be as far as these guys, but because he's doing, you know, responses, call him response, like I said earlier. He's just doing ad-lib track, yet he's definitely going to be behind the lead vocals, so it's kind of in between.
No place I'd rather be in the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more than gold. I let ya take control. Let the love unfold. I give thanks and praises, people. Yes, I do. Every day, every day. Oh yeah. Wanna give thanks and praise. Gotta give. And I stay flying away. Oh yeah.
Now, I've got those vocals soloed. Hopefully you're hearing the difference. You're hearing how the lead vocalist sounds up front. He's got the same type of reverb as the rest, but he definitely I can hear he's closer to me. The ad-lib, the ad-lib vocal is just slightly behind him. I hear a little bit more reverb on him, but he's not stepping on the lead vocalist, and level-wise nor position-wise. Same thing with the harmonies. The harmonies are farther back. They have a lot more reverb, and they're panned out farther. And did you hear the blend when they do the little spots? You could actually hear how they blend together now. They no longer fight each other. So this is what your mix is going to start looking like. You're going to start grabbing all these aspects using all your tools.
There's no place I'd rather be in the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul. This power worth much more than gold.
Alright, so that's, once you start adding your tools, you'll start getting more clarity and everything. It starts off as a rough mix just to listen and get the idea of how you want to mix this. Then you start using your tools to fine tune stuff. I would go and start EQing the tracks. I usually get asked, what order should I do this in? Ultimately, it's up to you. If you have the picture in your head, you know what this thing's you're wanting to sound like, well then you don't have to follow, any order. You could just get the outcome. But most engineers will actually first do a rough mix with just levels and pans. Then they go to the EQs and EQ the tracks to make them, you know, where they have separation and clarity and get rid of bad things on those tracks. Then they'll go and listen also for, okay, well, I need to gate some of this stuff. I mean, you listen to the kick and the snare. There's so many other instruments there. We want to get rid of that stuff. You'd want to get rid of, you know, just to make those drums cleaner, we use a gate. So noise gate. Put a noise gate on that kick. Noise gate on the snare. I would also do it on these toms. And right now I'm just kind of copying it across to show you guys the concept. Of course, you're going to need to go to each track, listen, and gate this thing correctly. Otherwise, you know, gate's not doing anything. Turn down the threshold. Get it to where it's just starting to trigger. And then if you remember, you could change your hold and release to allow more of the kick drum, or snare drum to come through. There's that one. Come over to the kick, for instance. Let's clean this guy up. Same thing. Turn your threshold all the way down. Bring it back till it starts opening up. Okay, it's at the end of the song. That's why I'm not triggering anything. Make it last a little bit longer. There we go. We're getting all the kicks, the sounding coming through. But I've cleaned up. I don't have the hi-hat sound on there or anything. Same thing on these toms. You want to do the same thing. The toms only play in 1 or 2 spots, so your gate shouldn't open up until those spots on all of these. Your hi-hats probably don't need to, you know, gate them, but definitely EQ them and so forth. I will point out that in the instructions, where are the instructions? Nope. Oh, I know where they are. Here we go. In the instructions, I actually tell you about how faders and pans, and you could think of how position-wise, so your stereo spectrum, your left, your right speakers, you could have the volume up, that would mean like closer, bring the volume down, that would make it farther, and then of course you're panning left to right. So in turn, you could really move stuff around within your stereo field. The instructions also tell you what we want from you in the mix. We're making this easy for you in a way. We're telling you what instruments really should be helped by, you know, EQing, for instance. So kick, snare, hi-hats, overheads, left and right. The bass, the guitar, and all the vocals need EQs. We'll be checking, you know, in your mix to make sure you've got EQs on those. The noise gates, we tell you that the kick, the snare, and the 3 tom tracks need gating. If you feel more tracks need gating, then add them, but definitely do, you know, these that we tell you to. Lastly, compression. Well, these guys all need compression. The kick, the snare, the overheads, the bass, the guitar, as well as vocals. All of those need compression. They all can definitely be helped by the next thing you see that we tell you, grab a reverb, add reverb to the snare, add reverb to the overheads, the guitar and the vocals, add chorus to the vocals, harmonies, and the bass. So you need to do those as time-based effects. And like for instance, I said it on the bass, so let's come over here, set that up. Bus number 4, it just now created a new aux. And on that bus number 4 aux, I'm coming over to add some chorus. So now there's chorus that can be fed, you know, from the bass. All I need to do is bring it up, Now the bass has some chorus. The vocals, well, I wanted some chorus on them too, so now I know that bus number 4 is where the chorus is at. I can sit here and start adding some chorus to the vocals. Harmonies will definitely be helped by some chorus. Just turn them up so that they get heard.
There's no place I'd rather be. Oh, yeah. Give thanks and praises people most high.
Alright, so you're seeing how the mix is all coming together. You'll be working through this. Just follow the instructions. We walk you through everything. We tell you what you'll need to turn in for this assignment, which is also in the grading checklist. You're going to have the whole mix completed in a Logic file. You'll have to zip that and upload that. Make sure that it's the completed mix. Don't send me the empty mix. In other words, this file has to have all your work in it. I'll be checking through it. An MP3 of your final mix. And hey, this is, think of it as you're sending it to a client and everything, so you'd want to send them a good MP3. Send it at the 320 kilobytes. The screenshot of that mix window that we were talking about earlier. And you'll see these are all the things we check for. Make sure you have your Logic session. I check for that because I need that to be able to grade the rest. I check to see that your faders and your faders are mixed. In other words, that they're not all at one level. You've done a blend. Appropriate stereo imaging, set with panning. That you've done some sort of panning. And I could tell when you just randomly turn knobs because nothing makes sense. It should at least be audibly pleasing. I've had students where they panned one way, the other one the other way, next one the other way, and the mix sounds horrible. Just randomly panned like that. We'll check to see that you have EQs. All 11 instances that we tell you about from that list. All 10 instances of compression. All 4 instances of dynamic gates. These are the bare minimums. You could have more than that if you wish. If you have EQs across every single track, great. Compressors across every track, that's fine. Gates, same thing. You'll have to have at least 2 time-based effects. Alright, so we want to see that chorus and that reverb, and that they're properly routed. It's important, the routing. The bounce track, the mix window screenshot, and make sure there's no clipping. In other words, no distortion. Which brings me right to where I'm going to show you this. And then lastly, of course, if it's late. But notice that my mix, it went over. I clipped. Now, I could either go back and start bringing down every single fader, which now messes up my mix, or there's a quick way of doing this. If I want to, right in your mix window, let me open up the full mix window so you can see everything. There you go. So I could select my first track, hold down Shift, select my last track. Okay, these are the tracks, not the main faders out. You'll see this one's called output and this one's master. Leave those at 0. But now that I've selected all the other channels, I grab one single channel and just bring it down a couple dB. A good way of looking at it is like, okay, well, I want the output of this thing to be around that -6. So I probably want to bring it down, since I went over only 0.5, bring it down to like 5.5 level-wise. I don't recall what I actually brought down so far, but I'll bring it down a little bit more. Now I can play it again. And notice it's playing right around that -6 point.
Yes, I do. Every day.
If I went down too low, then bring it up a little bit.
Wanna thanks and praise, gotta give.
But you sit there and move from one single fader, you're moving all of these proportionally. So if you ever screw up on a mix where your levels, but you're happy with the way it blends, and you just, but I'm distorting on the output. All you need to do is select all of them and drag up or down according to what you need. Now, don't do any other parameters while everything is selected, because then you really start screwing stuff up. Because watch, I won't even do that one. That one's too scary. But let's say here, I want to set up a bus 10. Notice what happens. Bus 10 now gets all the way across. It's like, you want to, if you want to do any kind of changes to one single track, go and select one single track. If you have them all selected, whatever you do will be affected all the way across. All right, that's gonna be your mix. You get to show off how you now know how to use all your tools, and have fun with it. Don't worry, you know, it's not being graded again for the way this mix sounds. If I hear something really off, or any of the instructors hear something really off, we're not going to ding you on it, but we'll bring it up to you. We'll tell you how to possibly help you fix that problem. So don't worry about this. This is more about just, you know, your proper routing and proper use of tools. It doesn't have anything to do with the way the mix sounds. You are welcome to do the mix in any style you wish if you want to tackle it. Ultimately, the easiest is just the, you know, because it does sound like reggae style. Make it sound like a reggae song. But there's nothing wrong with you wanting to, if you wish to get a little creative, you can make it sound like a completely different mix. And I'm looking right now for my examples. Here we go. Like that song that we just heard, mixed in different styles, would be, here it is. I mixed it down one day, regular, like reggae style.
There's no place I'd rather be in the midst of His majesty. Feel the power in my soul every day, every day. Oh yeah, wanna thanks and praise Him.
You know, traditional reggae style where the drums aren't so prominent. You hear more bass, that, you know, the organ sound giving you a little pop and so forth. But you could mix it down here. Like for instance, here's rock and roll style. I decided, well, let's show the students how this song would sound like if I decided I want to mix it rock and roll. There I grabbed drums, more prominent guitar.
Power in my soul, this power worth much more than gold. Yes, I do. Every day, every day. Oh yeah. Wanna thanks and praise, gotta give. And I stay fly, flying away. Oh yeah.
So you hear how the drums are a little bit more prominent and everything. Same song. I didn't do anything to the song itself. All I did was using your tools, changing it up. The last one, the most drastic change, is, well, remember the trick with the 808 drum? How we could make the kick drum give it that drop kick sound? Well, I decided to make it a dance version. So this is what it would sound like, dance version. You can really hear when the drums come in. You hear the delays on the vocals. You hear the flange on the bass. You hear. And if you listen closely, you could probably even hear how all of a sudden that chorus section. Let me pause it. Yep. There we go. All right. You might even hear how the vocals, the chorus sounds like, wait a minute, now it sounds like there's female singers in there. I'll show you how to do tricks like that. You can actually either through an aux or basically grab another track and copy the same vocals over and EQ them differently and change the dynamics with a pitch changer. And all of a sudden, I've added female vocalists to the background singers. So when you hear stuff like that, it's just tricks that you could do with the trade, and I'm not changing, no editing of the song. I didn't bring any female vocalists. It's all about understanding how to use your tools.
Thanks for crazy. Stay fly, flying away. Let the love unfold.
No. Nevertheless, you should, at least you get the gist as far as how understanding your tools can really make a huge difference. It's all up to you guys, your creativity. Have fun with it. Give us some, have fun with the mix itself. Just show us that you know how to use your tools. That's all we're really asking out of this assignment.